All right, diving in today, we're all about building better habits. And, you sent in some great stuff from James Clear's Atomic Habits.
Yeah, love that book.
I'm excited to dig into it. It's one thing to understand habits, but it's a whole other thing to actually put them into practice and make changes.
Absolutely. And I'm all about the practical side of things. Like, how do we actually apply these concepts and see those changes happen? Right?
Yeah, exactly. So we're not just going to summarize the book. We're going to pull out the good stuff that you can actually use.
Perfect.
So one of the things that Atomic Habits really hits on is that it's not about some huge overnight change. It's actually about the small changes,
Yeah, the little things.
those tiny little tweaks that make all the difference over time.
And he uses a great analogy right at the beginning of the book about an ice cube.
Uh-huh.
Imagine you're frustrated because the ice cube is not melting.
Uh-huh.
You've been working so hard to melt this ice cube, diligently applying heat, but you've only raised it from 25 to 31 degrees.
Oh, I see.
But the effort wasn't wasted. It was building up
Right.
to that crucial point, that 32 degrees where it actually melts.
Oh, that's such a good visual.
Yeah, that's the point.
It really is. And it ties into that whole plateau of latent potential. That feeling where you're working hard, but you're not seeing the results.
Absolutely. Like you're stuck.
Yeah. But those small, consistent actions are working beneath the surface, like that ice cube slowly warming up.
It's a total game changer for motivation. Instead of feeling defeated when you don't see instant results, you can actually trust that those tiny changes, they're adding up.
Yeah. You just got to trust the process, right?
You do.
It makes me think of that saying, it takes years to become an overnight success. Like all that work behind the scenes, it matters.
For sure.
So thinking about your own life right now, are there any areas where you feel like you're on that plateau, putting in the effort, but not seeing a big change yet? It's a question worth asking yourself.
Yeah, it's like, are you diligently practicing a skill or consistently working towards some personal goal? The change is probably closer than you think.
You might be right on the edge. Okay, now this is where Atomic Habits gets super interesting.
Okay, I'm ready.
It goes beyond just the practical tips. Clear argues that our habits actually shape who we believe we are, like at our core.
Like our identity.
Yes, exactly.
It's big.
It is, right. And he has this quote that just nails it. Behavior that is incongruent with the self will not last. So if we don't believe we're capable of change, then our actions are going to reflect that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, wanting to change isn't enough. We have to actually believe we are that kind of person.
So it's a belief thing too.
Yes, a belief thing. And the book gives this great example. Somebody wants to have more money, but they keep spending instead of saving.
Oh, yeah. I know that person.
Right. And it's because they identify as a spender, so their actions are matching their image.
Oh, that internal conflict. That makes it so hard to stick to new habits.
It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
You got it.
So I'm curious, listening right now, what are some habits that you feel really reflect your identity? Do they match the person you want to be? Or is there a little mismatch there?
Those are the connections we've got to explore.
And that leads us to another awesome idea from Atomic Habits. Habits as votes.
Votes. Like in an election?
Yeah, kind of. It's like every time we do a habit, we're casting a vote for the type of person we want to be. We're building evidence to support that identity. And the cool thing is, you don't have to be perfect.
Oh, thank goodness.
Right. Like in any election, there are going to be votes on both sides.
So we just need to win the majority.
Exactly. Clear breaks it down into two simple steps. First, decide what kind of person you want to be, like the writer, the athlete, the mindful one, and then prove it to yourself with small wins.
So like small actions consistently.
Yeah. Those are the votes. It shifts the focus from this grand aspiration to something you can do today.
Love that.
Yeah.
Actionable.
So what are some small wins that you can do today to reinforce the identity that you're going for? Remember, even something that seems insignificant can be a powerful vote in the right direction.
That's encouraging. And to change those votes, we've got to understand how they work.
Right. So how do habits actually work? Well, Clear breaks it down into 4 stages.
Okay, lay it on me.
Cue, craving, response, and reward.
Cue, craving, response, reward.
And this framework, it's like a roadmap.
I like roadmaps.
Me too. It helps us understand our current habits, but also how we can change them.
So it's not just understanding, it's like strategic, right?
Totally. The key is that our brains are prediction machines, always searching for patterns and anticipating reward.
We're like little detectives.
We are.
Yeah.
So take the example of your phone lighting up.
Oh, no, not my phone.
Right. That's the cue. That triggers a craving, like the anticipation of a message or notification. Then the response is, of course, checking your phone.
And the reward. That dopamine hit.
Exactly, whether it's social validation or just satisfying your curiosity. But what I find fascinating is that even these tiny, insignificant cues can trigger powerful cravings. Our brains are constantly looking for patterns even when we don't realize it.
It's like we're on autopilot sometimes.
We are, and that's why understanding the cycle is so important. It helps us become more mindful of those automatic
And
responses.
take control.
Yes. So think about a habit you want to change, like starting to exercise or cutting back on screen time or drinking more water. Now, try to identify the cue, the craving, the response, and the reward.
Putting on that detective hat.
Exactly. And once you understand those elements, you can start strategizing. You can change the cue, modify the response, even replace the reward. And that's where things get interesting.
The fun part.
How do we make good habits irresistible and bad habits less appealing?
The million-dollar question.
Right. Clear calls this making it attractive. We're talking about working with our brain's reward system, not against it.
I'm in. Tell me more.
So one powerful strategy is temptation bundling.
Ooh, temptation.
Right. It's this idea that we pair something we want to do with something we need to do.
So make the necessary thing more fun.
Exactly. Like listening to your favorite podcast while you're working out or watching a guilty pleasure TV show while you fold laundry.
Genius.
The book also talks about bundling something you're avoiding with something you truly enjoy, like rewarding yourself in advance. Say you have a chore you hate. What if you treat yourself to a nice, relaxing bath after?
Oh, I could get on board with that.
Right. So what are some ways you could use this in your own life? What needs to get done, and what can you pair it with to make it feel less like a chore?
They get a treat.
Yes. And while we're talking about setting ourselves up for success, let's not forget about our environment.
Our surroundings.
Yeah. Clear emphasizes that our environment can either help or hurt us when it comes to building habits.
Oh, that makes sense.
It's way easier to build new habits in a new environment where you're not battling those ingrained cues and triggers.
Yeah, like if you're trying to eat healthy, but your pantry is full of junk food.
That's a recipe for disaster. So Clear suggests using visual cues to make desired habits more obvious, like keeping your workout clothes out.
So you see them and you're like, oh yeah, workout time.
Exactly. Or put a bowl of fruit on the counter instead of hiding it away.
Out of sight, out of mind.
And on the flip side, make those unwanted behaviors more difficult. Like, if you want to watch less TV, unplug it after each use, or put the remote in a drawer.
Just add a little friction.
Exactly. Just a little bit can disrupt those urges and give you a moment to think. It's all about making those good habits the path of least resistance.
That are working smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive into atomic habits. You know, we've been talking about how our habits shape who we are, but now let's get practical.
Yeah, let's get down to those tools and techniques because Atomic Habits is full of them. And I love how Clear focuses on making those good habits enjoyable.
Right, like it's not just about willpower.
No?
It's about working with how our brains are wired.
Yeah, work smarter, not harder.
Exactly, and that's what he calls the fourth law of behavior change. Make it satisfying.
Ooh, I like that.
And one of the most powerful ways to do this is with immediate rewards.
Oh, tell me more about this.
Okay, well, you know our brains love instant gratification.
Oh, yeah.
Like we'd rather have that cookie today than wait for those long-term benefits of healthy eating.
So true. So how do we work with that?
Well, it's about finding those little bits of satisfaction that reinforce the good stuff. Instead of just relying on willpower, which can be so unreliable, we can connect those good habits with immediate rewards.
Make them more appealing.
Exactly. So for example, let's say you're trying to meditate every day.
Okay.
At first, it might not feel that rewarding, especially if you're a beginner, but what if you combine it with a cup of your favorite tea or maybe listening to a feel-good song for a few minutes?
It's like adding a little bonus to it.
Exactly. And those small rewards, they make a big difference. They help you stick with the habit even when you're not really feeling it.
You know, I do that. I often light a scented candle after I do yoga.
Oh, that's nice.
It makes it feel like a little ritual and makes the whole experience much more enjoyable.
I love that. Those are the kinds of things that really help build those positive associations. Over time, the habit itself becomes more appealing.
You're training your brain.
You got it.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of positive reinforcement, let's talk about habit tracking.
Oh, yes.
We've touched on it, but there's so much more to say. Visualizing your progress is huge for motivation.
I'm a very visual person. I love seeing those check marks on my calendar or, the streaks on a habit tracking app. It just feels good.
Right. It shows you what you've accomplished. It makes you less likely to break the chain.
And I think what's great about Clear's approach is that he doesn't just say track your success. He says, track when you slip up, too.
Because it's going to happen.
It is. It's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. We all have those days when we fall off track. The key is to get back on as quickly as possible.
Bounce back. He even has a saying for it, never miss twice.
Ooh.
So if you miss a day, try your best not to miss the next one.
Yeah, build that resilience.
You got it. And habit tracking can help you notice those patterns in your behavior. You might find that you're more likely to skip that workout on certain days, or maybe stress leads to eating those unhealthy snacks.
I hadn't thought about it that way. It's like using data to really understand yourself and make better decisions. Like, are there times when you're more productive or environments where it's harder to focus? Tracking can reveal that stuff.
It's like a data-driven approach to self-improvement.
Yeah.
But, and this is important, Clear says don't get too obsessed with the numbers. It's easy to get caught up in hitting that metric and forget the bigger picture. It's like something he calls Goodhart's Law.
Goodhart's Law, yeah. I've definitely experienced this.
It basically says that when a measure becomes a target, it's not a good measure anymore. We can get so focused on that specific number that we forget why we started.
Like if you're tracking steps to get fitter, but then you start taking all these extra walks just to hit 10,000.
It's just for the number.
Steps are just a way to get to your goal, right?
Exactly. Don't lose sight of the big picture. Okay, now switching gears a bit. We've talked about making good habits attractive. But how do we make those bad habits less appealing? Especially when they give us that instant gratification,
Yeah, it's tough.
Well, this is where Clear's second law comes in. Make it unattractive. And one way to do that is by reframing how we think about those bad habits. Instead of dwelling on the pleasure, try focusing on the consequences.
So really highlight the downsides.
Yes. Immediate and long-term. Like if you're trying to stop smoking, instead of thinking about that nicotine hit, remind yourself of the damage to your lungs, your skin, everything.
You're basically changing the narrative.
And you can change the language you use too. Instead of I can't smoke, try I don't smoke.
It's subtle, but it feels different.
It is. You're not restricting yourself. You're affirming who you are. You're a non-smoker. Another strategy is to make the bad habit harder to do. We mentioned this earlier with environment design.
Right.
So if you're trying to watch less TV, unplug it when you're done.
Yeah.
Or put the remote away.
Make it inconvenient.
Exactly. It interrupts that automatic urge and gives you a chance to make a conscious decision.
To think about it.
And Clear also talks about commitment devices. These are ways to basically bind yourself to the behavior you want, even when your future self might be tempted to stray.
Future you.
Yes. The book tells this great story about Victor Hugo. He was trying to finish a novel. He was struggling to meet this deadline. So what did he do? He had his assistant lock away all his clothes.
What?
All except a big shawl. So he couldn't leave the house. He was stuck.
He had no choice but to write.
He had to write. So obviously most of us don't have to go that far. But there are simpler ways to do this. Like if you're trying to save money, set up automatic transfers to your savings account. If you want to exercise more, sign up for a class, or find a workout buddy for accountability.
It's like outsourcing your willpower a little bit.
Exactly. Now, remember the explore-exploit trade-off we discussed earlier?
Yeah.
Clear says we tend to succeed in areas that play to our strengths and interests.
Yeah.
But how do we find those areas in the first place?
That's the question.
Right, that's where exploring comes in, trying new things, experimenting, getting outside that comfort zone and seeing what clicks.
I think that's so important because we often put limits on ourselves based on what we think we're good at or what we like. We might be surprised if we just allow ourselves to explore a little.
You never know what you might discover. Think about it. Have you ever tried a new hobby or skill and been surprised by how much you enjoyed it?
Oh, definitely.
It happens all the time. The explore phase is all about being open, casting a wide net, and seeing what you catch.
I like that analogy. And then once you've explored enough,
you move to the exploit phase.
Okay.
That's where you focus on honing those skills and interests that really light you up.
So it's kind of like playing a game, right?
Exactly. Clear uses a brilliant analogy about playing a game.
Oh, yeah.
He says that a good player works hard to win the game everyone else is playing. But a great player, they create a new game where their strengths are an advantage.
It's like finding your own path, your own niche. We don't all have to play by the same rules.
Exactly. We can create a life that feels meaningful and fulfilling by playing to our strengths. Okay, before we move on, I want to touch on something we all experience, those times when we just don't feel like it.
Oh, I know those days well.
It's easy to get excited about a new habit, But then that initial enthusiasm fades, and it's down to the daily grind.
Yeah, we've all hit that snooze button instead of going for that run or skipped a writing session because we just weren't feeling it.
But Clear makes a great point. It's in those moments when we choose to show up, even though we don't want to, that we really show our commitment and it shapes our success.
So showing up is a win in itself.
It is. There's a
Yeah.
quote from a coach in the book. He said the most successful athletes, they're not always more talented or passionate. They're just better at showing up.
Consistency.
It's all about consistency, building that muscle. So next time you want to skip something, remember, showing up, that's the real victory.
Yeah, it shows you're serious about it.
It's a vote for your future self, a step closer to becoming the person you want to be.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into atomic habits. We've covered so much ground, but before we wrap things up, there's one more piece of the puzzle I want to bring up: reflection and review.
Yeah. It's like taking a step back, seeing how it's all coming together. Without that pause to evaluate what's working and what's not, we could just be spinning our wheels.
It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and lose sight of the bigger picture. Kind of like driving without checking the gauges or looking in the rearview mirror.
You might be moving, but are you going in the right direction?
Exactly. And James Clear, he suggests making reflection a regular thing. Some people like a weekly review, some prefer monthly, maybe even annually. It's up to you.
A habit checkup.
I love that. A chance to celebrate wins, look at the challenges, and make adjustments as needed.
And, Atomic Habits talks about this fascinating example of how Pat Riley, the legendary basketball coach, he used this idea with the LA Lakers. Remember that?
Oh, yeah, I read about that.
He had this system called the Career Best Effort Program, or CBE.
And it wasn't just about points and rebounds.
No, it was about analyzing every little thing. Assists, steals, turnovers, even their attitude on the court. Everything.
Wow. So every week, Riley would meet with each player to review their performance.
It was all about helping them reach their full potential. And, they were already a talented team. But this system took them to a whole new level. They won championships.
It shows that reflection can be a total game changer. And not just in sports, right? In anything.
Absolutely. So how can we actually do this? Well, journaling is a great way to start. It helps you understand your own behavior and find those patterns.
I'm a huge fan of journaling. It's like having a conversation with yourself, untangling those thoughts.
And you can also just schedule those regular check-ins with yourself. Once a week, once a month, whatever works for you.
Like a progress report.
Ask yourself, what's going well? What needs tweaking? What are my priorities moving forward?
Be your own coach.
Yeah.
And if you have an accountability partner, you can even make reflection a part of your discussions with them.
Absolutely. Share your progress, brainstorm solutions. It's like having someone in your corner.
As we've been talking about all this, I'm struck by how much Atomic Habits focuses on the long game.
Yeah. It's not about some quick fix. Right?
Now, it's about those small, consistent actions that add up over time.
It's about the system. So instead of obsessing over the end goal, we focus on building those daily practices that are going to get us there eventually.
It's like instead of just wanting to climb a mountain, you focus on building the strength and skills to become a climber.
Yes. It's about the journey, knowing that all those little things we do, they matter.
It makes me think of that quote, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." It's taking that first step, and then the next, and the next.
Showing up consistently, even when it's hard. So as we wrap up our deep dive, I keep coming back to this question from James Clear. He asks, since our habits shape who we are and what our future looks like, what's one habit you could start or stop that would make the biggest positive impact on your life?
That's a powerful question. It makes us think about the impact of our choices.
Yeah.
What could that one habit be for you? Maybe it's that daily meditation or finally committing to that exercise routine.
Or maybe it's putting down your phone an hour before bed or tackling that procrastination habit. The key is finding something that aligns with what's important to you.
Something that feels challenging, exciting, and that will create positive change.
And remember, even the smallest changes can make a difference over time. Don't underestimate the power of consistency.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Atomic Habits. I hope you found some helpful insights and tools to build those positive habits and break free from the ones holding you back.
Remember, this is a journey. It's about constantly learning and growing. So keep trying things out, keep reflecting, and keep striving to be the best version of yourself, one habit at a time.
Thanks for being here for our deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring and happy habit building.